Welcome back to Scotties Hobbies. Today we're going to be working on this 2013 Toyota 4Runner. Who's we? It's me, Scotty B, and Posty. Hi, say hi. That's hi. All right, we are going to be replacing the front brake pads and rotors on this vehicle. Customers complaining that the vehicle is vibrating while slowing down, going down hills, and he requested that we replace the front brake pads and rotors for him. So that's what we're going to do. The brake pads and rotors that we're going to be using are my favorite brake pad and rotor set from Power Stop. These are the semi-coated rotors. Semi-coated will not rust around the hub or the outside. The semi-coating also can act as a sound dampening over time. I really like the semi-coated over the regular rotors. You can see that rotor right there. There's rust all around the outside, inside of the hub. This rotor will not do that. The brake pads themselves, these are the Z17 976B ceramic brake pads from Power Stop. They have a nice silencing shim on the back. It's a rubberized compound silencer on the back. Has the wear indicator located on two of the brake pads. Where's the other one at? Right there. So one brake pad per side. Ceramic brake pads, like I said, really good. Every brake pad kit that you get in the Z17 series has all the hardware. On this one, it's got the slider pins, but if you have a regular brake caliper style, it comes with the hardware on everything. So it's really, really helpful. Inside the box also comes with some lube if you don't have your own, and it also tells you where to apply the lube when you're doing the brake job. Pretty helpful. There'll be links in the description below for all these parts if you need them. I'm going to show you tips and tricks as we go. And just real quick again, the brake pads are 17976B. The rotors are JBR 1395 SCR. Links in the description for everything. Also, as we go, I am going to be showing you the torque specifications as needed. And you might be wondering where I get the torque specifications from. Let me show you real quick. This is the Motor Guide book, Brake Specifications Guide, and bleeding procedures, but this book has a ton of useful information. When I'm machining rotors and drums, it has the minimum thickness, maximum diameter, a ton of information including the torque specs. This video will be good for the 2010, I believe, all the way up to 2021 Toyota 4Runners. There'll be the for sure year range in the description below. While you're watching, like, subscribe, share, and let's get going on replacing these front brake pads and rotors. Just like any other manual will tell you, first, make sure you have proper PPE on to get the job done, and also make sure you have the negative battery terminal removed from the battery before you perform any automotive repairs. Just kidding, don't worry about the battery thing. And we're going to hop in the vehicle and turn the wheel to the driver's side because we're working on the passenger side, so the caliper will face towards us or be more out here so it's easier to work on. Now, before we go too far, we're going to hop up here in the engine compartment, and here is your brake fluid reservoir. We're going to take this cap off, just leave it loose, so when we compress the pistons back into the caliper, it doesn't blow any seals or gaskets in your reservoir. It'll just escape out through the top. Now, when I'm doing a brake job, I always like to take a look at everything, not just do the brake job itself, but I want to take in consideration, what do the ball joints look like, what do the sway bar end links look like, lower ball joint, see if your shock has any moisture around it. Just look and see while you're in here, does anything else need to be replaced? You might not want to do it right now, but you'll just know in your head over time that these parts do need to be replaced. You can see right here, this is your sway bar end link, and this thing is blown out pretty good. So this is something I'm going to recommend to the customer to get replaced after we do the brake job. So just take in consideration everything that's going on around the brakes, not just focus on the brakes. To do a brake job, it's also worrying about everything else, not just your brakes. Now we're going to remove the brake pads. With this one, this is a dual piston or pistons on both sides of the caliper. Sometimes you can pretty much use like a screwdriver or a pry bar and wedge the brake pads into the pistons to retract the pistons. But in this case, it's a little bit hard to do that with this style. So I'm going to use a brake caliper compressor. One of my favorite ones right here. This is my favorite style of brake caliper compressor to do this type of brake job. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and compress the pistons back into the caliper. When you follow the procedure that I'm doing, you do not need to bleed the brakes when you're done doing a brake job. Just do them as I'm doing them and you'll be fine. You'll build up the pressure when we're all said and done by pumping the brake pedal, and that's all you need to do. No bleeding when you're following my brake procedures. Now, to be able to get some play on this caliper without bending this molded line right here, this brake line right here, it is a line, bends really easy. So you want to take consideration of that a lot. I'm going to remove this bracket off of the knuckle, and that'll give us movement, be able to use this rubberized brake line right here. 12 millimeter. To save yourself some time and effort, do not remove the 12 millimeter first like I do right here in this video. Remove the 10 millimeter off of the wheel speed sensor to the bracket, and then remove this 12 millimeter bracket to knuckle bolt. That'll make it so much easier for you, and that'll end up giving you the play that you need to be able to move the caliper around. All right, so that's going to give us a little bit more movement using the brake hose rather than this molded hard line right here. On the back of the caliper, there's a 17 millimeter bolt right there and a 17 millimeter bolt right here. Do not loosen up these bolts on the caliper. You're just going to be giving yourself a ton of extra work. Going to remove both these 17 millimeters right here. I'm going to use my Duralast breaker bar 17 millimeter socket. Just loosen them up like so. That one wasn't that bad. When you're loosening this top one, be careful of the brake line. Don't want to mess that up. Yours might be a little bit harder. Then I'm going to use the ratchet to get you out the rest of the way. If you have power tools that would speed up the process for you right now, even a 3/8 driver would help you out. We're going to remove both of these bolts, and then we'll be able to remove the caliper off of the rotor. There's one. There's two. When we remove the caliper off of the rotor, we don't want the caliper to hang from the brake line, so we're going to use a S-hook and hook it onto the caliper and just hook it somewhere. Maybe go on the bottom side right here. Hook it somewhere where it's not gonna just dangle on the brake line. And you can see I have the S-hook up here on the upper A-arm onto the caliper, so it's not hanging from the brake line. Now we're just going to remove this rotor. As you can see, hitting it with my purse just didn't get the job done. So hard to come off, right? Now these bolts, you could whack this thing with a hammer if you like, but you could also use 8 millimeter by 125 in both of these holes and it'll come right off. So let's go ahead and do that. Really wouldn't be such of a big deal to just whack the hammer right off of the hub, but in this way I feel it's safer for the hub, the bearings, to not whack it as hard, which you're probably not going to do any damage, but also I'm going to resurface these rotors and use them on another vehicle or somebody else. So I want to make sure we preserve the surface of the rotors. What's good of it? Oh, came right off, real easy. Remove the rotor. And now we're going to put the caliper back on to the knuckle bracket and compress the pistons back into the caliper. Don't have to thread these bolts all the way in, just get it up there to hold it. Now that we have the caliper back on the knuckle, we're going to I don't know what, but all the dogs in the neighborhood are barking. Posty, shut up. All right, you can see the pistons are pressed all the way back into the caliper on both sides. That's why this tool comes in very handy on calipers like this. Now what we need to do is get the pads out. You could clean off your slider pins and reuse them, but we're not going to do that because the brake pad set that we got comes with everything. There's one of your springs right out. Now to get this spring out, you could just push your slider pin out like so, and your spring will come right out like so, and you'll be able to pull on your brake pads. Voila! Before we install the new brake pads into this caliper, we're going to clean off the sides where the actual brake pad meets onto the caliper or rubs on the caliper. Going to use a wire brush. Got some gunk buildup on there. Maybe going to have to use a file a little bit. Much better. You want to clean the caliper off on the top and the bottom as good as possible so the pads could move as freely as possible when you do the reinstallation. Now that everything is cleaned up, ready to install the brake pads into this caliper, we're going to go ahead and remove the caliper again and hang it up on the control arm, or A-arm, and it's just hanging up there. We're going to do our best to clean this hub off before we install the new rotor onto it. Get this as clean as you can. Kind of hard with it being such a thin surface area on the hub, but do the best you can. We will end up putting some anti-seize on this before we put the new rotor on, but before we do that, we're going to clean the rotor off using this hub assembly right here. So we have the new rotor. We're going to put it up on to the hub backwards. Going to use some brake clean. Spray the surface area of the rotor. And wipe it off. You want to get all the glue, not glue, but like stuff that's built up from it being in production and sitting on the shelf over time. A little bit of a grease spot right there. Nice and cleaned up. You want this to be a nice clean surface area. Makes the brake pads break in a little bit easier, or bed in easier. Turn it over. Don't touch the surface that you just cleaned. And clean off the front side. Now that your rotor's all clean, just set it off to the side real fast. You could either apply anti-seize to the hub surface like I am right here. Sometimes I'll apply it to the inside of the rotor. It really doesn't matter. And this just causes the rotor to not get stuck on this hub over time like it was when I took it off, or the factory one. It really wasn't that bad. I've seen a lot worse. But this should stop that from happening. Do your best to not get any anti-seize on the lug nuts. Grab your rotor again. Just double check that I got a little bit of grease on this one. Just move it around. And give it one more little clean off just to be safe. Grab it by the outside. What I like to do is use one lug nut to hold the rotor in place while I'm putting everything back together. Just makes it a lot easier so the rotor's not wobbling around when you're trying to put everything together. Just makes the production, or makes it putting it back together, much easier. Now we're going to grab the caliper, lube up the inside of it where the pads are going to be sliding inside the caliper, and put that all back together. I am going to be using ceramic brake grease. You could use the grease that comes in the kit, but I personally like this. It's a grease I've been using for a few years now, and I've never had any problems, comebacks, or just no problems with this grease at all. What I'm going to do is put some grease, not too much, just a little thin layer on the inside of the caliper where the brake pads are going to be sliding. So right here, nice little thin layer, and on the other side, just a nice little thin layer. If you have any excess grease or lube, make sure you wipe it off. You don't want it to get on the rotor. Now we're going to set your caliper over the rotor onto the knuckle. Doing our best to not get any grease or dirt on that cleaned off rotor. Going to start the 17mm bolts in the back of the rotor, or back of the caliper into the knuckle. Got the 17mm just started. We're going to tighten these up and torque them down. I'm going to use my gun to speed up the process just a tad bit. Going to use the snap-on torque wrench, and we're going to tighten these up. Well, you could use any torque wrench. I'm using my snap-on. I'm going to tighten these 17mm bolts from the caliper to the knuckle to 91 foot-pounds. Am I gonna need an extension? I think I'm gonna. When we install these brake pads, the wear indicator goes on the inside, and you want the wear indicator on the leading edge. So this is going to be turning clockwise, or the rotor is turning clockwise. The leading edge is going to be the bottom of the inboard pad. I'm going to apply a little bit of grease to the sides, not too much. Careful not to touch the surface of the brake pads. You could put grease on the back side where the pistons are going to meet the silencer shims. I might as well do that to the other side too. Better safe than sorry. And you don't want to use a lot of grease, just be pretty, a little bit goes a long ways. Now we're going to install the slider pins. When you install the slider pins, you want to put a little bit of grease where the brake pads are going to be riding on your slider pin. And this is really honestly where you're going to get a lot of different opinions about if you should put grease on your sliders or whatnot. And I used to not use grease on anything pretty much, but I have realized that the manufacturers recommend grease, and I put grease where I find it that the manufacturers recommend putting it. Here is the other spring for the other side. Remember this one? We're going to install this spring as we install the bottom side slider. So again, I'm just going to put some grease where I think the brake pads are going to ride, and just not a lot of grease, just a little bit. And the downside, or what people say could happen when you're using grease right here, is that road grime, brake dust could build up on these sliders and cause them to not work properly. But I feel like if the manufacturer recommends putting grease there, do it. So here's your spring. And what these springs do is when you let off the brake pedal, it'll cause the brake pads to push off of the rotor, and so you don't get any extra friction that you don't need. Got it all the way in. Gonna go ahead and put the retainer in the back, like so. Get this one lined up, if we can. Got them both in there, and lock the centerpiece in. So we got this one locking in the sliders from not going in and out. Now we're going to slide or put this spring into the brake pads. It's not as easy as it looks, quite honestly. You got to force them into submission a little bit. I don't know what in the world that loud sound is outside. Got that one in. And that one in. Now look at, everything is all legit, it's in there. Alright, now we got the spring inside, hooked into the brake pad, and you're all done with the brake pads and the caliper rotor. Now, you're not completely done. There's a few more things you gotta do. We gotta put this back together, which is gonna be the wheel speed sensor wire onto the bracket and the bracket onto the knuckle. And then when we're done with that, we're gonna go press on the brake pads and build up pressure onto this caliper and make sure we don't have any sort of leaking. Got the 12 millimeter going into the bracket to the knuckle. And then a 10 millimeter that's holding this here bracket for the wheel speed sensor. And then this right here, there's a little clip, just clips right in. That's it. So everything else is tightened up right here. You're all done. Now we need to go over to the driver's seat. Gonna head over there now. And just press on your brake pad. Actually, your, sorry, brake pedal. This one feels weird, honestly. This brake pedal really doesn't get too stiff. Usually when you push the brake pedal, it stiffens up a lot, but this one didn't stiffen up too much. I don't really like that. But you can see over here, the brake pads are now applying onto the rotor. Everything looks sealed up. I don't see any leaks, and we're gonna be all good to put the wheel on to this hub and rotor. Now when we are tightening up the lug nuts, we want to make sure we tighten them up in a star pattern, and we're going to also torque down the lug nuts. We're going to torque the lug nuts down to 83 foot-pounds. After I get the lug nuts started, I put my gun on the very lowest setting, and I will snug them up, the lug nuts, while the tire or the wheel is in the air. And then I'm going to lower it down. After you get the wheels torqued down and tightened up properly, don't forget to tighten the fluid cap on the reservoir before you get going on your way. And we're going to torque these lug nuts to 83 foot-pounds. When we torque them down, we're also going to tighten them up in a star pattern. And that's it. 83 foot-pounds, star pattern. You're ready to go to the other side. Now, if this video did help you out, make sure to comment below with the year, make, and model of the vehicle that this video did help you on. This should be good for the, what was it, 2010 to 2021-ish Toyota 4Runners, and I believe a Lexus GX, I forget what it was. But there will be a link in the description below to all the parts and tools that we used in this video. I appreciate you guys watching, and I really hope this video did help you out. Thanks for checking out Scotty's Hobbies, and I'll see you on the next hopefully helpful video.